How do I think a man should be? I think at our core, we have to stay true to our innate DNA, which is that of provider, protector, and solution finder. Wrapped around that, there needs to be a level of understanding. And I talk a lot about being vulnerable and vulnerability, and so because of what I've been through anecdotally, right? But I believe that vulnerability comes in understanding what you're feeling. And I don't think enough men
are self-aware to really acknowledge it, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Daniel Leese Podcast. If this is your first episode, welcome. And if you're a repeat listener, thank you for showing your support over the last few years with the podcast and coming back each and every time. Also, thanks to our sponsors, Ansem Skin, natural skincare range for men. Go check them out. I'll leave the link in the show notes. Now over to this week's guest. I met this guy for a coffee the other day and I couldn't quite believe exactly what he has been through in his life. A lot of the things that he's been through, you'd only expect a person to go through that once. But this happened a number of times. So I'm super excited to get him onto the podcast and talk about his story because I think it's a very important topic. Men, where do we fit in society nowadays? How should we feel? How should we be? How should we talk? Express our emotions? And it's super important to talk about what we go through as men because at the end of the day, we are just humans as well. And this guy's been through a lot and he now uses everything that he goes through to help other men to basically navigate their way through life, bringing them together, talking openly about emotions and really encouraging why men should talk openly about their story as well. And trust me, you really want to listen to the end of this podcast because what we're going to talk about, you literally will not believe what this guy's been through. So please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming this week's guest, Manny Djornor.
Thanks for having me.
How are you, mate?
I'm doing well. Yeah. Navigating through.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's what we're all trying to do, right? Navigate through life in this interesting part of our lives. But for those who obviously are not aware of who you are and what you do, who are you and what is Mentality Podcast Group?
Right. So as you've rightly said, I'm Manny Djornor. As I describe myself oftentimes, I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy trying to find my way in life, but with the purpose to make sure that other people will never have to go through what I've been through. So, because of experiences, because of things that I've uncovered, because of feelings, because of having understood what trauma is and how it can contribute to the way we choose to live our lives. Mentality was birthed on the back of my own experiences and something really deep that I went through. So mentality as a platform is a space pertaining mainly to men. However, by extension, knowing that we interact mostly with women, it does deal a lot with also how men relate with the other sex. But in essence, there are 4 pillars to it. There's a community pillar, which is why we spoke earlier on off camera about Brotherhood DXB, because Brotherhood DXB used to be underneath mentality or part of the mentality group, if you want to call it that. We have events, which we run regularly, secret supper clubs, golf days, workshops, panel discussions, marketplaces. We have our media arm, which is where most people know us, which is everything that we do on YouTube, Instagram. We do bi-weekly Instagram lives on lots of different topics. And then, so what we've got here, community services. So community events, media and services. So with services, we have, as part of our group, built a nice little database of different service providers, everything from neuroscientists to nutritionists, personal trainers, psychologists, coaches, mentors, therapists, everything.
Yeah, nice. And how did you get to mentality? Like, what brought you to that point?
What a question. Where do I start? The short story is I often tell people that I'm a victim of my own success. I was doing very well at one point in my life, really, really well, in comparison to most people my age at the time. And the rug got pulled from underneath my feet to a point where I felt like I had nowhere to go. I felt like I had no support, which was me lying to myself, right? Because of my family, I have friends, I know a ton of people, but I felt like I didn't have anyone that I could connect with at that time. And it was because I thought I'd failed.
Yeah.
And the only way I knew or I felt to fix it, if you want to call it that, was to try and end it all. And in doing so, or in attempting so, and not succeeding, I realized that there wasn't really anyone or any spaces for people that felt like me. So I created it.
Yeah. So it's basically something that you've created out of your own suffering to help others.
Yeah.
Nice. And how long has it been going now?
The mentality has been running for about 4 years in ideation. It's not actually myself. I'm not by myself, I should say. Mentality,
co-founder, yeah.
Yes, it was birthed through conversation. So Corey, who's my co-founder, was somebody who worked in the gym that I started attending at the time. I had broken my leg in 3 places, so I was dealing with that as well, as I couldn't play football, which was my outlet. So I used to go to the gym just to kind of get away, and I met Corey. Corey is, in essence, a younger version of me.
Has he ever suffered mental issues as well?
He has never. So he's the younger version of me in terms of background and where he's come from, and the way he thinks and the way he approaches life.
Okay.
But he's the opposite of me in that his general approach to life is very kind of like au fait. It's just like, okay, cool. I'm going to navigate my way through it. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to deal with it. It's going to be fine. And he doesn't hold on to negativity.
Yeah. Obviously, I've had the pleasure of knowing your story. So, obviously, with your career, you've done big things, and we'll come on to that shortly. But what I want to do is I want to rewind it back to the beginning, because I always think that people's earlier years are what shapes them into who they are today. So you're originally from Ghana, yeah?
Ghana,
So you've got a Ghanaian background. Were you born there?
I was born in Ghana, yeah.
Okay. You obviously got a very strong English accent, so I assume that you obviously grew up in the UK?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. And so I want to know what young Manny was like, and how life was for him.
Young Manny. Okay, so let's go right back to the beginning, actually. So I was born into a family that, look, I wouldn't say we were poor. We're doing better than most, but we were not good.
I suppose when you compare, like, for example, if we talk about you compare to the UK to Ghana, right? You've got, on the flip side in Ghana, you've got pure poverty where people are struggling to even feed, and they're living in, unbearable circumstances. So, but you were kind of on the...
No, let me paint the picture. So this is exclusive for you because I've never spoken about this on any podcast, but so when I was born, at 2, my mum had to leave. I lived in a corrugated zinc building. The whole building was made of corrugated zinc. It was 2 rooms in there.
So it's like a hut, basically.
Literally a hut.
Any power? Any running water?
You get water and you shower outside with a bucket. Power, no, because there's lamps and it was a kerosene lantern.
Yeah.
So
like kind of like
the old school.
Almost like a little, had a shower head on the end. So when you poured it over, it kind of like dripped out the water slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the light was like a kerosene lantern. So it was literally like a glass tube with a wick in the middle.
Wow.
And then you put kerosene at the bottom. and then you light the wick,
And that gives you the light.
and it'll give you the light to kerosene.
Wow.
Yeah. So I lived in this place with my grandma, one of my cousins, and a couple of my aunties, and there were only 2 rooms in it. It had holes in it, so when it rained, you'd have to like put buckets down and stuff. And then sometimes at nighttime, you would bring in the livestock so like it wouldn't get stolen and whatnot. Like when I say livestock, we didn't have a farm; it was just like chickens. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I was born into. So mum left. My mum was incredible. She her strength, and I've realized that in my adult years. But the things that my mum achieved were incredible. She left, first person in the family, first person in area, to just up and leave, move to the UK, and she did it because she wanted to do it for the better of her family. And then obviously she had me at the time, so for me, right? So growing up, I was we didn't have anything, but I was the popular kid because mum would send me foreign things, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't see my mum till I was 6. So that was my life. My life was going to school. I say school, nursery, but nursery in Ghana is very different to nursery in the UK.
Okay.
In that, by the time I was 5, 6, I could do mental arithmetic in my head off the top. And I'm talking equations off the top of the head. I could spit out 12 times tables to you.
Whilst what you describe is obviously sounds pretty hard, at that moment, did you ever feel like things were hard?
Absolutely not. I was having the time of my life.
Exactly, yeah.
It was my reality.
Yeah.
So you never have the approach of, oh, this is hard at the time. You just think,
This is life.
it's life. You just get on with it.
And I suppose with the family vibe as well, it must be quite, whilst it was obviously not particularly ideal to be around your family all the time, you must have had an incredible bond.
My grandma's God rest her soul, but she was my favorite person in the whole world. In the whole world. What that woman did for me, in terms of just being available.
Yeah.
Yeah. So having her, having my cousin Joyce, having a few of my auntie, Sophie, Sophia. I felt good. I was in a good place. It was nice. It's a good life.
Come 6, what prompted the move to the UK then? Your mum was ready to receive you?
I think so. So, I don't quite remember the exchange of, conversations or what it was, but at that point she was like, look, the best place for me would be in the UK. I think she'd become a little bit more established.
Yeah.
So she wanted me to come and then school and then obviously do the best for me, and it would have been better for me.
Yeah.
So
by the time you arrived,
I walked into
a new family.
So I end up getting first time on a plane. By the way, it was incredible. I loved it.
Did you go on your own?
No, I went with my grandma.
Okay, so she
was
came.
Her first time on a plane as well.
She moved with you.
So she moved with me. And we both got on a plane together. She was bricking it. She was frightened. I, on the other hand, young 6-year-old,
loving life,
running up and down the aisles, loving life. But yeah, we got to the UK and turned up, and my mum, meeting my mum consciously for the first time in 6 years.
That must have been so weird.
Yeah. She'd come to Ghana before when I was much, much younger, but it didn't register. But meeting her consciously was at 6 years. And okay, mum. And I think I quite remember being a little bit hesitant because I don't know this woman.
Yeah, you would be.
Even more so when we got home and there was a man in the house and a baby in the house. And I found out that this man was my mum's new husband, my stepdad. Oh, I call him dad now because he's been the only man in my life growing up. But and I had a little sister. Now, again, alien. I'm trying to figure out everything from the environment to the language to...
Could you speak English?
No. I can understand words, but I was not fluent at all.
Yeah.
Not that we didn't speak English in Ghana. In school, we taught English. But at 6 years old, that literally everything I heard every day was like the local languages. So English wasn't really something that we used. So getting to the UK, and London, or English, the way it's taught, and English, the way it's spoken in the UK are very different.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Very different.
Especially in London.
Especially in London. The different slangs. And living in South London, the different slangs and terminologies and verbiage that you hear, it's just, it's not a dictionary at all.
Yeah.
So it was tough for me for the first few years.
Yeah. And your grandma stayed with you?
She stayed with us for, I think, a couple of years.
Yeah.
A couple of years. And then she went back.
How long did it take you to adjust into that? Because it's, when you talk about trauma, like, that's trauma in itself. When you're a child and first of all, you've got to kind of reconnect with your mum, but then there's a random man there and then there's also another baby, and it's like...
And I've never referenced it as trauma in my younger years until I was much older and actually started understanding what trauma was.
Yeah.
But, it was hard. My mother wanted to reconnect with me and she didn't. Again, my mom's an incredible woman. But she had another baby to look after. And my dad had to figure out how to be a father to a kid that wasn't his. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But she must have obviously spoke to him about having a child in Ghana, no?
Yeah, I mean, I believe so.
Yeah. With that sort of stuff, I'm like, mate, if you want to take on my mum, no problem. But like, these are the responsibilities.
Yeah,
it's up to you. You got to manage it.
I believe they had a conversation. However, there's always dissonance in people's stories, isn't there? There's always one story is this, the other story is this, and everyone has their own version of reality.
Yeah.
Whatever that was, and it's not for me to determine what conversation they did or did not have.
Yeah.
What I would say is the first few years, the first many years of growing up were very lonely.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like I was connected to anyone. I was fine, and then when my grandma left, it was even harder because now I didn't have my best friend anymore.
You didn't have that safety net either, somebody to go to.
Yeah.
And I mean, fast forward today, like, what's the relationship like with your mum now?
Oh, my mum's my guy.
Yeah.
I will phone my mum up and talk to her about absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely anything. She's my person. We speak, but it's been years in the making. And I remember when I was 15, promising myself, saying to myself that I wanted to create a relationship with my mum that was unbreakable. But it was because of all the negative feelings that I'd had on the lead up to that. And I think at 15, I was at a point where I was starting to become a little bit more self-sufficient. I was earning a bit of money. I could take care of myself. So I wanted to be that person who can be cool with my mum. To a point where I wanted to look at my mum as my friend as opposed to my mum. And that's where the healing of that relationship came in.
Yeah. Now, obviously going back to you and getting used to the family, obviously going to new schools, meeting new friends, and typically when we've interviewed people that have, similar sort of backgrounds, you go to the school, you're the only black kid in school, that makes it even harder. Was that sort of the similar situation?
No, because I went to a black school, so
okay.
I fitted right in. But I've always struggled with my self-esteem, with confidence. You'll never see it on the outside. Right? Most people that know me or most people that have seen me think I'm like super outgoing and super. I tell people I actually don't like people because I'm always afraid of people's perception of me. And it stems from being young and not feeling very popular, not fitting in with the popular people, but they're not fitting in with the geeks either. I'm just floating in this middle ground of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Right. In my school, you know, we had guys who, I mean, I grew up in South London, right? So let's
been quite rough as well.
Let me take you, not quite. It was
Which
very
part
rough.
of South London?
I grew up in Croydon.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not a case of quite rough. It was rough.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest with it. We fought all the time.
So the cool kids were the hard boys, basically.
Yeah. And the hot girls liked the hard boys. And then the geeks had their own little clique and their own little crew, or the clever ones, if you want to call it that. But they were geeks. And then you had people like myself who just kind of floated. So I was cool with the hard boys because I could handle myself. And they knew that because there was a situation where I had to protect myself or defend myself, where against one of the bigger, more popular boys. And when that happened, I was accepted. But I couldn't be part of their crew because I was afraid of what would happen if I ever got in trouble.
Yeah.
So I couldn't be with the hard boys. But then I couldn't be cool with the hot girls because the hot girls only wanted to be where the hard boys were.
Yeah.
It was just a weird dynamic for me.
Yeah.
So school was interesting. Like I always wanted to be one of the popular kids, and I was always somebody that could get along with everyone, but I just operated in a kind of in an open space by myself.
And apart from obviously fitting in, like, how was school for you? Like, did you enjoy actually going to school?
No, I didn't hate it, but it's just one of those things. I'd much rather be doing other things. Like I wanted to play football.
Yeah.
And my mum, being my mum, didn't want me to play football. She was more geared towards academia. So school was something I did just to get the results. And I was bright. Like I was very bright. But I was bright also because I had a photographic memory. I think I said that to you before.
Yeah.
I could...
Teach me, please.
I don't know where it's come from, but I could sit in a class, fanny around, not bother, and then exam time comes, and I'll sit in an exam room and recall every single thing that was said in class.
Wow. So you don't have a problem like remembering passwords and stuff like that?
Oh no, I'm good with that. What's your password? What's your pin for your card?
Yeah.
No, I'm once it's locked in, it's locked in.
Yeah. And at what point did you discover football?
I came to football late, actually. I used to play at school. So we used to have, I went to a Catholic school. So we used to have house captains and sports captains and so on and so forth. And I always knew I was good, but how good, I didn't know. Because like I said, Mum wouldn't let me play for any of the school teams or anything like that. And then in year 9, I'll never forget this, in year 9, we had the inter-house games. And in the year above me was a boy called David Tripp. And the year above him was George, I forget his surname, but Constantinoglou is the name that's come. But he was big, heavy, solid 6'4" kid, even at 16. Yeah. He was a twin. And both him and his twin used to play for Crystal Palace Guards. George was a goalkeeper. And I remember looking at him thinking, I can do what he does. Now, anyone who knows me, I mean, I tell everyone I'm 5'10", I'm joking. But anyone who knows me knows that on a good day, I'm 5'9", right? On a good day. On a bad day, I'm like 5'8", just. Yeah. And I used to look at him, I was like, I could do what he does. I could be that guy. At inter-house games this year, we were playing on a Saturday. So I remember leaving home, getting on the bus, 3 buses, getting to Coombe Lodge. I was just about on time. And the first game of the inter-house games was us against his house, and he was in the other goal. Now, he played for Crystal Palace Guards, so he had a couple of people from Palace
Watching him.
I turned up, I was like, all right, cool. I didn't know the guys from Palace were there. I was like, cool, I can do this. And I was determined to show up, determined to be like, okay, cool, if he can do it, I can do it. Right after that game, I got approached by a guy who asked me where my parents were. I was like, oh, I'm here by myself. It's like, oh, I'd like to speak to your parents. Found out he was a scout or one of the academy scouts for Palace. So I got to school that week and got called in. It's like, oh, this guy from Palace, because he couldn't get to my parents. So this guy from Palace wants to bring you in on trial, so on and so forth. Went home, I was super excited. Said to my mum, look, this is the situation. She's like, okay, cool. That was it. Nothing more, nothing less. Cool. I think the first trial night was like on a Thursday evening. So I've come home from school, I've done my chores, I've done everything. I've gone upstairs, did my homework, finished. And I'm waiting for her to call me and say, oh, we're going. I'm not getting a call. The trial started at 8. So around about 7, I've come downstairs and I'm like, Mum. She's like, go read your books. I'm like, what? Yeah, go read your books. And that was that. I can't argue.
Didn't take you to trials?
No, I didn't go. Fast forward about a year. And the same situation arises. This time I'm in year 10. And we had that year a teacher who joined the school, Mr. Ojabu. For some reason, this man took a liking to me.
What was his name, Mr. Ojabu?
Mr. Ojabu, yeah. He was, he came in as a PSE teacher.
Which is PE, right?
No, it's personal social education.
Okay.
And then I think not long after that, he got the head of year job. But he used to invite me into his office at lunchtime and sit there, and literally he needed someone to talk to, so just talk to me. But he'll be sat there making like sardine sandwiches, literally 2 pieces of bread and a can of sardines. And he'll be making sardine sandwiches.
It's a stank.
Oh, mate. And I'd just be sitting there and he'd be talking to me. Oh, yes, how's this? But he saw me as like one of his kids, which I didn't appreciate back then. But I'm so grateful now. But he was the guy who then decided, okay, cool, this opportunity's come. Clearly, I was doing very well. So by this time, George had left and David was in year 11. I was in year 10 now. And David was, at the time, touted to be the best goalkeeper, young goalkeeper in South of England. He was doing South of England trials, etc. He was doing he was doing like South of England trials, and he was touted to be the best. And then there was me in my school. Now, my school was known for having good sports people.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, Lual Deng, or Michael Deng, as he's, Lual Deng as he's now known, but back then it was Michael Deng, he was a year below me, but he's played for Chicago Bulls, he's played for Miami Heat, he's played for LA Lakers. We had Gavin Dublin, who was the fastest kid in the Commonwealth at some point.
Yeah.
We had Twinnell, who was the Commonwealth's the number 1 kid, female sprinter at her age in the Commonwealth. We were a sports school.
Yeah.
But we're a sports school because we're predominantly black.
Yeah.
And most of the kids that came to us were talented. There were half the people now in the music scene now that you see, guys who are acting in like things like Top Boy, etc.
Yeah.
Have passed through.
Yeah, nice. And so the teacher, did he push it for your mum to make sure that you would actually start going to these football trials?
Yeah, he actually came on his own volition, drove to my house, sat down with my mum, in my living room. I was like, look, the boy's too talented to not try. Right. This was before football is what was there, right? This was when football was still paying well.
Yeah.
But it was more about the allure of being a footballer as opposed to the money, right? So his thing was, look, the kid's talented. Let him do his thing. It's like, I will make sure he gets the results that he needs. I will personally come and get him, pick him up, take him to trials.
Yeah.
But yeah, he stuck it out for me. He stuck his neck on the line.
And what was the next step for you then? You went back to Crystal Palace, did all the
So
trials.
did Palace Guards. And then one day I got a letter to the house from Chelsea, from the Chelsea Academy, saying, we're watching you, we're going to keep an eye. Eventually did a few weeks at Chelsea. Ended up getting released on the basis of my height. They call it presence. But yeah, a few years later, actually, they ended up letting me go. And then I was lost.
And you were playing, how old were you at this point?
16.
So you'd kind of just finished school.
Yeah.
You'd gone into thinking that you were going to be a professional football player.
Yeah.
And then it kind of just...
16, 17, it was like, okay, well, what do I do now? And then I got an opportunity to go and play football in Romania for Brasov. I was like, I'll give that a go.
And how did that go?
Incredible. It was fun. Until I got sent back in the summer and they were like, oh.
So you only spent one season there?
Not even a season. Like 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
And what was their reasoning for sending you back?
The reason I got at the time from the guys who were representing was that, they looked elsewhere. They were trying something different. What I later learned was that they had asked for more money than was necessary. I wasn't by myself, there were like 6 of us.
Yeah.
They'd asked for more money. And
the people that were representing you?
Yeah. And it just, the club was like, no, it's all right.
It's okay, yeah. So you came back to England, and at this point, what, still 16 or 17?
No. Came back to England, I was just before my 18th.
Yeah. And then what?
I was like, okay, what do I do? I can still play football in England, right? So I started playing like high-level non-league. Dulwich Hamlet, at the time, Croydon Athletic, who were in the high Rymans, or Ishbian as it's known now. Eventually made it to Aldershot Town, Barnet, and just kind of that cycle of non-league football. Then put myself through university as well. Got myself a degree whilst doing all this. And then I was like, okay, cool, let's get into the working world. Right?
Did you kind of come to the realization that it just wasn't going to work out?
What, football?
Yeah.
Everywhere, listen, I was playing and I was doing well, but everywhere I went, I was being told, oh, he's smally. You'd make a phone call to a club and they'd be like, oh, how tall are you? And you want to tell them like, oh, I'm 6'4", 6'1", just to open the door. Like, no, 5'9", 5'10". And it's not even a question of, oh, is he good? It's like, oh yeah, he's a bit small. Right? They didn't care how good you was. So I got to a point where I'd go to trials or I'd go to clubs and I'd hide my gloves until the final minute. I'd literally turn up to clubs and I'd either tuck my gloves in the back of my top and cover it so no one knew I was a keeper, or I'd just leave it in my bag until like you do all the drills, you do all the fitness stuff, you do, and then right at the point where they're like, okay, well, keepers, everyone get into your position, I'll pull out my gloves. But by which point, it's too late now, and we're here now. So let's go.
The thing is, though, it's such a weird way of looking at things because, like, you can still get good short keepers, and it's not like you're a midget. Like, you're a normal-sized man. Yeah. Like, you're the same size as like an average human. Yeah. You know.
But in the UK, they don't think like this. Right, the UK football scene, if you're not 6 foot is seen as small in the UK.
So even if you were playing out of your skin, they still wouldn't take you on.
6 foot is seen as small. So literally, one of the first questions they'll ask you is, what position does he play? Oh, he's a keeper. Okay, cool. How tall is he? Irrespective, because I think the UK coaching system is designed around, okay, if he's tall enough, he's got presence, so we can coach the rest.
Yeah. So you moved into the working world. Did you stop playing football?
No, I played football all the way through. I actually still play. But yeah, I carried on because, again, it was non-league. So it wasn't like it demanded all my time, right? You're training 2 times a week, Tuesday and a Thursday. Usually you're playing on a Saturday.
And it's a good crack, isn't it?
Great fun. And like I said, football's always been my escape. It's always been my outlet. So not ever being taught or not ever understanding how to deal with the things I was going through, football was the one place I could go and just forget the pain, forget the noise, and just be there and be present. I think that's the key. I could be present at football, whereas everywhere else, my brain was just firing.
Yeah. But obviously you're part of getting the degree, but then obviously not making it in football affected you mentally.
Of course.
Now, take us to the first time of your suicide attempt where you were thinking about kind of taking your life because things hadn't been working out.
The very first one was, the very first attempt actually was, sorry, give me a moment. I had finished uni, just finished working at the Alliance in Leicester because I was looking to start a career somewhere. I'd worked second and third year uni. I'd worked at Alliance in Leicester as a bank teller, bank clerk. And I joined one sales operation after another. I'd last a month here, 3 months here. And you can already imagine the conversations I was having with myself, let alone the conversations other people, my mum, everyone around me was having, right? And it got tough. And then there was the first period of time was I went, I think, 7 months without work. And then I got dropped from my football team because I wasn't performing, because I mentally wasn't there. And it just felt like everything that I knew, everything that kept me, kind of kept the cycle going, had just been taken away from me. And at first it was fine, but I think when you're having these conversations with yourself for 7 months, I used to come home and literally sit in my room, draw the curtains, and just sit there and just be in my thoughts. And then my mum or the family would come from like work or school and stuff, and I'll just put on this face of everything's okay.
But inside, you've not made it in football. You keep changing jobs. You feel like nothing's working out.
Yeah.
I suppose you probably felt like a bit of a failure, really.
Not a bit. I just felt like I felt like, what's the point? Literally, what's the point? So one night I was on the way to training. I was going to Whiteleaf. And I didn't get the bus actually. I walked to Thornton Heath train station. And as I'm going, I'm having this conversation with myself. I'm like, okay, cool. You know, life is what life is, and you keep trying, but it's not working out. And just got to Thornton Heath train station, and it was quiet. I was going in the opposite direction to where, like, you know, what you would usually happen is most people will jump off at Norbury, which is a stop before, or at Thornton Heath, and then it gets quiet and quiet and quiet as the train goes on. So I'm stood there on the platform, and in my head, all I could hear was, fuck it, just do it. Literally, fuck it, just do it. So I could see the train coming from the distance. And I could see the train coming from the distance. I was edging closer to the edge of the platform. I could just hear, fuck it, just do it. Closer, closer. And then my feet were over the edge. And I was just waiting. because I knew I couldn't jump too early. I was just waiting. And my phone starts ringing. So I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm just ignoring it. It's ringing and it's just incessant. I can hear it in my ear. Train's coming. I'm like, so there's 3 things going on now. My phone's ringing. I'm trying to get my timing right. And I could just say, fuck it, just do it. And it's just, fuck it. And it's just screaming at me now. Fuck it, just do it. Just do it. And I don't even know how, but I reached for my phone. And I've answered it. And it was a girl called Amida, who, we were friends, but we barely spoke. So, we were friends, but we barely spoke. And she says to me, she goes, Manny, I've just got this urge to call you. But I feel like whatever you're doing, just sit down. Just sit down. So she said to me, just sit down. And I just backed up. As the train hit the edge of the platform, I just backed up, just stepped back, sat down. And I sat there crying my eyes out for a new train station. At my most vulnerable, there's fucking people just walking up and down past me. That, for me, was... I got on the next train and I went to football, but I wasn't present. Like I wasn't there.
It's a lot to have gone through, to be honest, and then carried on and just gone about your everyday life. Do you know what I mean?
I had no choice. Who the fuck was I going to go cry to? My mum's idea of pain is like, fun. The amount of times I told her, I don't feel good. She's like, what you got to worry about? You got a roof over your head. You got food. Fucking get on with it. I had no choice. I had no one to talk to. I literally had no one. I didn't have friends.
Yeah. So all these emotions just building up inside of you. I think that's the worst part about, obviously, sometimes being a man is just like, you just taught to just keep everything inside. And it's just, you know, my brother, he's battled with depression and stuff before. And, you know, again, I talk about this a lot on the podcast, and it's like we're desensitized to, like, I mean, it's like one of the questions I've got later on is like, you know, how do you think a man should be? Which we'll answer later on. But it's like, where do we fit? Do you know what I mean? We can't be too prominent in the workplace because, you know, then it's just sexism. You know, we can't be our truest forms in the sense. So it's like, what can we be? Do you know what I mean? And I think when a man was put on like the planet thousands of years ago to provide, and then when you're not having the ability to provide, it kind of like demasculates you in a sense, if do you know what I mean? And you 100%. Feel when you feel lost and you don't really know, because we were never meant to be like this.
No,
we were just meant to wake up, survive, and feed ourselves.
Go on hunt and come back.
We've been put in this environment where we need to do so many complex things that it's overwhelming. And then that multiplied by the fact of looking at and comparing your life to other people and seeing like, I mean, I do it, you know, I am doing what you would define as well. But I still look at the people that are doing more than me. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard to put a finger on it, but you know, the one thing that I can put it down to probably in my own, I would say, assumption is just really not living to our purpose and what we feel passionate about. Do you know what I mean? And in today's society, it's very difficult to do something you feel passionate about because, you know, we've been products of life. Yeah,
we've humanity has been put into boxes, if you want. We've been compartmentalized as humanity so that we can be controlled easier. That's my belief, right? Yeah,
I mean, you summarized that very, very well. I didn't do it too good. I was like beating around the bush, and you're like, yeah, this is how. And no, it is true. It is true. It's like, you know, I was chatting to a guy playing golf the other day, and he was talking about how he has to spend 42,000 dirhams before he even gets to spend anything on himself, and that's because of family, schooling. So it's like everything's just become how can we just get money out of you? Do you know what I mean? Get you in the system.
That's it.
Get you in the.
That's it.
Get you in that. And that's what they want, because they ultimately, maybe not here, they want to like put like, make a product out of you and control you in a sense.
That's it.
And the UAE, like I say, is different because you can achieve great things here.
Yeah.
But in different countries, especially the UK, for example, you it's like you say, it's very, once you're in that societal norm, it's very difficult to get out of it.
Yeah. I often refer to UAE as the land of opportunity. It's
100%.
You can be whatever you want to be if you allow yourself grace. If you have a bit of money and you allow yourself the ability to be able to just work hard and achieve, you can be whatever you want to be here.
Yeah.
So I love this place.
Now, after everything that was going on in your life and you got the degree, at what point did Wall Street come about?
So after doing maybe 2 years of just trying to figure out, okay, cool, where am I going? What's happening? I got headhunted to go and work for a firm on Wall Street. I was 22 at the time.
Young.
22, 23. And I moved out there with a cohort of about 5 people. Nice. We all went together. We'd all been hired at the same time. We all went through the training scheme together. And we were the next potentially success of the organization. We moved. I lived on Wall Street. I lived on a 45 wall, 29th floor apartment overlooking, just literally looking out onto the Trump building. So I literally look down, you see Wall Street. It's right there. Left of me had the New York Stock Exchange. Right of me, you're going towards the metro.
Must have been quite a cool experience, but
it was surreal. It was surreal. But when you're going through it, you don't appreciate it until you're not there. I was working for a company called CVS Surveyors at the time, right, by Liverpool Street. And I get a call. I was struggling, by the way. Yeah? I was struggling. Like, I was struggling in terms of work. Like, the penny just would not drop for me. I was everything. My work ethic has always been, like, there's not many people that I work in anything I do, right? Whether it's work, whether it's I will bleed before I stop and let somebody else get ahead of me. I get a call from CVS Surveyors, basically, and they're like, and guy was like, come meet me for a drink. So I was like, what for? So come meet me for a drink. I want to talk to you about this opportunity on Wall Street. I was like, cool, for shits and giggles, right? Let me go. So I went that same night, met him, we sat down, and he was like, yeah, listen, your CV, I want to take you. I thought it was bullshit. I was like, this guy's fucking me off. Like, are you sure? I'm here. I've struggled in the last 3 or 4 vacations, like the last 3 or 4 companies want to take me to Wall Street. You're fucking lying to me. He's like, no, we'll take you. All right, cool. I left and he messaged me. He's like, look, we want to take you. I need you to come for like a second interview and so on and so forth. I was like, okay, where? He's like, Wales. No, Bristol. I was like, yeah, forget it. You're clearly having me on and it's some kind of scam. He's like, no, come. I said, no. So I said no the first time, second time, third time, fourth time. And he kept, like, literally every 2-3 days, you coming. And I thought to myself, this guy must really, they must really want me to be chasing me like this. So I was like, cool. So I went, goes up to Bristol, spend a week up there. And it was a training week. And we were, it was like, if you've seen Wall Street or Boiler Room, it was like that.
I was going to say, is it very much similar to the Wolf of Wall Street kind of vibe?
Yeah. So there's people in the office. Everyone's got like headsets on, right? Some of them are attached to the phones on the table, and there are some that have got wireless. So I learned this later on. The guys with the wireless headsets were all the managers, were all the senior people. And the guys who had the wires attached to the phones were the salespeople, the traders. And every, 20, 30 seconds, you'd hear someone screaming at someone across the room. So basically the managers were tapped in to the phones of the guys. And so
Listen
they could
to
hear
what
the
they were saying.
conversations, right? Yeah. So they could dial in. So every like 30, 40 seconds, there's maybe 12, 13 different pods.
Yeah.
Every 30, you'd hear someone just screaming at someone. So what managers will do is they'll dial in and they'll be listening to the conversation. And as soon as it gets to a point where they're closing, two things will happen. Either the manager will snatch the phone and do the close themselves, or they'll scream at the person. Now, the headsets were noise-cancelling headsets.
So you can hear it outside,
So the person on the other side couldn't hear it. So what the manager was doing was screaming at the person on the phone
to say
the answers.
Yeah.
Right? And it was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We're sat in this environment in a glass room, so we could see all of this going on. And they're taking us through the intricacies of the markets, trades, The way I used to work, as I said, we had piles of paper, right? Research. So I used to do US hours. And then I'd make sure I was in the office for European hours. So Europe, then UK, then I'll be working all the way through. I used to work 20-hour days, 20 to 21-hour days. I'd go home, at first I was living on 45 Wall, but then I moved to 101st and Broadway. So Upper East Side, Upper West Side, sorry, Upper West Side. And I used to get the metro home. It would take me about 40 minutes. Get home, go to the deli on the corner, grab something, or I'll go home and cook something. But that would take me another half an hour. I'd eat, I'd put out my suit, and then go to sleep. I'll get up, shower, put my suit on. An hour later, like clockwork, head back to the office, and I'd work through the night. Basically do my research. So I was ready when Europe opens in the morning.
Is that when coffee became your friend?
I used to go through about 6 to 7 double espressos by 11 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. Yeah, you kind of need it when you're not sleeping that
I was
much.
buzzing.
Yeah.
Buzzing all the time.
What would you say Wall Street taught you?
It taught me to slow down. The energy captures you. So after I left that company, after I left that office, I moved to Bristol for a month. I'd actually come home to do my visa or redo my visa, paperwork to go back. And I came to Bristol and ended up being told, oh, can you stay in Bristol? I was like, all right, cool. What was supposed to be a week, 2 weeks, ended up being 9 months. And then one day I got a phone call. Our Cardiff office is struggling. Can you go to Cardiff? So I jump on the train. Cardiff's an hour's train journey.
Still doing Wall Street stuff, yeah?
No, I was working for an events company at this point.
Okay.
A company called GDS International, doing business-to-business events. A similar vibe. Very, very similar vibe. Very similar kind of trading style, sales style. Headsets on the phone. We didn't have chairs. That's how bad it was. We literally stopped. We didn't have chairs. We had high desks. We didn't have chairs. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Go to Cardiff, arrive there, and it's like, okay, cool. The office is struggling. So at this point, I'm thinking to myself, why do I keep getting sent to all these different offices? What should have been a few days in Cardiff, then back to Bristol, then back to London, then back to New York, end up being another 9 months.
Yeah. So Dubai came around when? What year?
2013. So I'd left GDS and I'd joined a company called Cover It Live, which was that was a different experience. Getting into that company was different. I think we spoke about it when we met for coffee the other day. So Cover It Live, I'd been coming back and forth. We then ended up selling the business to our biggest competitor, a company called Scribble. Scribble always knew that I was going to leave. I'd given them maximum a year. we had a partner here who was responsible for the Middle East business. Now, when I joined Scribble from Cover It Live, I was cleaning the absolute floor with them, which was why they wanted to buy Cover It Live, because it was getting to a point where we were less than a third of their team, but revenue-wise, we're killing them. Their business model was slightly different in terms of growth and how they approach growth. And it wasn't just about revenue. It wasn't just about closing deals. It was about acquiring other businesses and completing this ecosystem that they were trying to build. But just specifically what we did, we were cleaning the floor with them. We had a partner here responsible for MENA. When the deal was done for Cover It Live, I handed them all my clients, which included clients like beIN Sports, Al Jazeera, Khaleej Times, Golf News, etc. They didn't know how to handle those clients. So if I give you an example, at the time we had a deal going on, an MOR deal going on with Khaleej, where they were paying us $23,000 per month. And it was worth what they were getting. These guys came in, and that went from $23,000 a month MRR to $4,000 MRR. They just didn't know what to do with it. So I, at the point, was made a channel partners director. So my job was to basically fly around to all our channel partners, Brazil, Russia, here, and just coach them. Australia, and just coach them to be successful.
Yeah.
And to kind of do what I was doing, right? Because clearly I was doing something right. At Cover It Live, I was global sales director. So I was 52 flights a year, maybe. Yeah. 3 weeks at home. So 3 weeks on the road, 1 week at home. Literally,
It's like one flight a week.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I could be anywhere in the world, though, with that one flight a week. I could be in Australia for a week, or I could be in Geneva for a week.
Yeah.
I could be in Sao Paulo. It didn't matter. It's just go, go, go. Yeah. So, I did that, which was fun. Teaching other people to sell like Manny was fun. And then got to a point where it was August 2012, I came over here, and Vince, the CEO at the time, said to me, look, just write it out, just go with him to meetings, do what you have to do. I came over here, came back, and he started asking me questions. He was like, so what do you think? I'm like, they're not really it. Like, they're not doing anything. Like, they're just taking money. They're not doing anything. Came back again for a month in September. August, I came for 2 weeks. Then came back again for a month in September. And in that month that I was here, I really kind of studied what was going on, because I needed to write a report for Vince to figure out where the Middle East office was going on wrong. And at the time, we were looking for more investors, right? We were valued about $100 million. We were looking for more investors at that time. And we needed to show that we were a multi-office operation, so that we had offices in every region. So I was assessing, went back. He said, what did you see? I said, look, you've got to get rid of these guys. Otherwise, you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve. He said, okay, cool. Who's going to run it? I don't know. That was that conversation. So that was September. Came back again end of October for a week. And it was at that point I was like, yeah, I think my time's done with Scribble. So I went back and he had the conversation with me again. He said, who's going to run it? I said, I don't know. I said, but what I would recommend is you set up your own office, you have your own entity, and you try at least to rescue the deals that we've got currently, and then just build. So, all right, cool. Left me alone. Didn't do any travel first part of November. Last week of November, he's like, so when's your next trip? And I said to him, no, I'm done at the top of the year. I'm giving you a month's notice. Because I think it was only a month's notice I had to give him. I said, I'm done. Start of the year, I'm going to go and figure out what's next. I'm going past just new. So at that point, he was like, oh, okay, cool. He left the conversation, came back across, like, would you consider Dubai? I was like, no, I'm done. He turned around to me, he's gone, what's your price? And I laughed. I was like, I'm done. He said, what's your price? He said, everyone's got a price. What's your price? I said, all right, cool. So at that point, I'm 26. I went away and I was like, what's the most ludicrous package I can ask for? It took 2 days and I came back to him. I wrote it down. I came back to him and I was like, I want this amount of money. 27, South London. And I'm asking him for close enough 6 figures, right? I'm asking for 6 figures. I'm asking for accommodation. I'm asking for trips back home every 3 months, every quarter. I need you to pay for trips back home. I'm asking for some kind of title change, right? So I've put this down. I'm like, yeah, he's never going to accept this. Never going to accept this. It was
accepted it in a heartbeat.
But he didn't. This is the funny thing. He didn't even accept it to me. It was a week before the Christmas break. We were going to go off for 2 weeks. And I was in the office. And then one of my mates came up. I was like, oh, congratulations. What? It's like, what? Haven't you seen the email?
Yeah. He'd announced it to the whole company that you'd got the job.
So and I didn't even know. He basically sent out an email saying, okay, everyone, look, we're going out for Christmas. We're breaking for Christmas. But before we break, there's a couple of announcements. Let's give congratulations to our new VP of MENA.
Wow. And that was it?
That was it. So literally I had 2 weeks to gather my shit.
And how long were you with that business for in the UAE?
I did 2 stints with them.
Yeah.
The first stint was 3 years, just under 3 years. Like a month under 3 years. And then I got bored and thought, let me do a sabbatical year. So I went and worked for a UN affiliate as head of disaster relief materials into Africa.
That must have been quite a exhausting job, like emotionally, eh?
It was exhausting on the delegation side because you're dealing with ministries of health. I'm dealing with the Minister of Health in most of these countries. You're talking Nigeria, Kenya.
Lots of hoops to jump through. Did you ever...
It wasn't the hoops. I don't mind jumping through I don't mind the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
It was the under the table shit.
So I'm trying to figure out at what point had you jacked all this in and mentality had become a thing? Because there was another moment in your journey which spurred this on, right?
Yeah. So I'm not gonna have another emotional moment. Let me just steady myself before I go into this story. My second stint. So when I left the NRS, the UN affiliate, I went back to Scribble because they'd been asking for me back. That was my second stint at Scribble. And I was about a year and a half into my second stint at Scribble. And I was playing football in the amateur league at the time. I'd met some people. They'd introduced me to some other people, including a couple of sheikhs, I won't mention from where, and a couple of pretty well-connected local people. They understood I played football and so on and so forth. So I got introduced into the guys at Banias. And that conversation started. And there was a back and forth and training and so on and so forth. But in order to make that happen, I needed to go full-time. Which meant that I can't have a job, right? So I'm 32 at this point. No, that's a lie. I'm 31, 32, actually. this is my last throw, or what I thought was my last throw of the dice, right? Because I was still in that UK mindset of football, 32, 33, it's retirement for you, right? No one's going to want you at 30, 31. Like, who wants you? And they're going to go for the younger guy, right? But this was a very strong opportunity. So I thought, let me go for it. So I quit my job. And they were like, what? You're leaving us again? Like, why would you leave us? So look, I'm going to go and do what I love. They were like, no, stay with us. You know, we're building something. I was like, no, I'm going to go and play football. So I left. Trained, got myself back into shape. The Banias thing started happening. Started looking at apartments in Abu Dhabi. They were going to give me a driver. All sorts. Everything was in play. Contracts get sent in. Now, my mum's a lawyer by education. So I sent her my contract. She looked at it. She gets a couple of people look at it. It's airtight, right? So, Mum, you sure? It's airtight. So I signed it, sent it back. And then training begins and so on and so forth. A few months in, I get a phone call saying, we're cutting ties. What? What have I done? Oh, we're cutting ties. And that was it. That was the end of the explanation. That was it. That literally was it. A couple of days later, I get a knock on the door. Police. Do you know this person? Yeah. Okay, we need to question you. We need to take you in for questioning. So for about a week, it was back and forth. Like meetups, CID, conversations. Okay. So now I'm stuck. I've got no explanation, no understanding what's going on. I've got no job, got no football. I've got a little bit of savings. What do I do now? Okay, cool. Just got to survive and look. So I call up Scribble. I'm like, look, I'll come back. They're like, nah, we filled the position. And you dropped us twice. No, we're good. We wish you well. No bad feelings, but
Yeah.
So now I'm without job, without anything. I got to understand that these guys or this lady and a guy had managed to swindle 1.9 million dirhams from a couple of players and the club, basically. And that was the reason why.
It kept ties with you.
Because I was associated. Long story short, I was still at the time paying for both mortgages back home, mine and my mum's, rent here. At the time, my mum was kind of semi-retired, so I was sending money for both my mum and dad, actually. Both of them were chilling, so I was just taking care of them, as you do. And so I just started burning through my savings. But I couldn't tell my mum what's going on.
Yeah.
So like she'd be asking me, how's things going? Oh yeah, it's all right. All right, so as long as, in my head, as long as she didn't have to have a worry about money or anything like that, I'm good. So doing that. And then I had to move out of my what I would call my bachelor pad at the other time. I used to live in the Cayenne Tower, 54th floor duplex penthouse. Incredible place. And I moved out of there and I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Sports City.
For those that don't know, that's a drastic change.
Huge change. So this 1-bedroom place was 90,000 dirhams, all in, including bills, cool. So every month, the landlord was expected to pay the bills and everything would be fine. So getting through, burning through. Get to about the 6th month now. No, the 7th month. And I'm starting to not have much left now. So I'm starting to think, okay, cool. How am I going to survive? I mentioned earlier about how I believe God puts things in my life or gets me in places. I was dating a cabin crew girl at the time, Tessa. We broke up on bad terms. But I genuinely believe, and I'll say this on camera, because if she ever happens to come across this, she'll understand. I genuinely believe that she'd been placed in my life during that period, just so I wouldn't have caused harm to myself earlier. She was as emotionally draining and as oxymoronic as this may sound, she caused me pain mentally, but she was meant to be there because I wouldn't have survived if she wasn't.
Why was she meant to? Why did she cause you mental pain then? Like, was she just quite destructive in what she did?
No, she thought so. She was about 10 years younger than me, right? Experientially, she hadn't been through enough in life to understand some of the things that I was going through. So where she could be there for me, like in person, as like companionship, where she tried to help me, I say try, financially, because most of what she tried to help me with went back to her anyway. And then when we broke up, I got a list of every single payment that she's ever made and then refunded that as well back to her. So notwithstanding, she got paid twice, basically. But I don't care. That wasn't that, because again, I was grateful to have made it to the other side. But mental pain in that, I feel now, in hindsight, that she needed me to be low so she could be relevant. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then that obviously led to a second time of potentially... What actually happened in that moment then? So what's going through your mind again? Like,
let me go back and say, on everything that I've said about Tessa, she was a godsend. I want to make that clear. She was a godsend. She was put in my life for a reason.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got to a point now where money had run out. I was literally living on fumes, if you want to call it that. The way I used to feed myself at that time was I would literally take, it was something stupid like 60 dirhams a week, right? And I'd go to Carrefour and I'd buy the rotisserie chickens that were like 18 dirhams for one. So I'd buy like 3 of them. And then I'll get a couple of bags of frozen veg. And that was my dinner, my lunch. No, I didn't eat breakfast anyway. I haven't done for years. So that was my lunch and my dinner. And I'd literally go home and I would food prep those 3 rotisserie chickens and the bag of veg, food prep them, and then stick them in the freezer. And then lunch, dinner, lunch, dinner, lunch, dinner, lunch, dinner. And I did that consistently for maybe 2 months. I think the nail in the coffin was, there was one day, I used to drive to Abu Dhabi to go see her. So when she's not flying, as soon as she lands, I'll make sure I'm at the airport to pick her up. And, unless there was no way to get there, I didn't have money for petrol, whatever the case would be. But I was there maybe 3-4 times a week.
Yeah.
This one time I was driving in, I think my petrol tank wasn't empty, but it was low. And I was driving into Abu Dhabi. And I got a phone call to tell me that electricity at home had gone. And I was like, shit, okay, cool. And then I was like, how am I going to eat? So I spun the car around. Off the Sheikh side road, loop to loop, all the way back. Get back. And every fucking thing in that freezer was defrosted. Everything. Literally anything I could eat outside of bread was gone.
So you had no food, no money, No electricity.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And it wasn't that. So I'd paid up my 90,000 dirhams up front, right?
Yeah.
The landlord was supposed to pay the electricity. I paid what I was supposed to pay. He had forgotten for 3 months to pay the electricity. So I'm sat in an empty apartment. In an apartment, no light, no food, no nothing. And I was like, how have I gotten this low? Like, how is it possible that this has happened again? Like, I'm the guy who's supposed to look after everyone else. That was the mantle that I carried. I'm everyone else's problem solver, right? I'm the business Superman. I'm the guy who fixes things. How the fuck am I here now? And I broke down. And that continued for 7 days. And literally, I wouldn't leave my apartment. I was just sat there. And when I could get hungry enough to eat, which was maybe once every 2 days, 3 days, I'd have like a couple of slices of bread, some water. That was it. So about the 7th day in, I sat on my balcony. And I don't actually remember the sequence of events that led to me being stood on the bad side of the balcony. But I remember standing there and holding on. The apartment was called Stadium Point, right? So I've got my back to the balcony. I'm looking at the cricket stadium in Sport City, literally looking into it. I'm on the 17th floor. And I've looked down. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's go. And in that moment, the only thought that I had in my head was, my mum's going to have to come and clean this up. She literally is going to have to come and clean me up. So I'm hesitant. I'm there. I'm like, one side of me is like, let's go. The other side, I was like, okay, but your family have to clean this up. Specifically, my mum. My mum has to clean this up. I'm already trying to take care of her. But and then I was like, oh, but then what's my brother going to do? Like, how's he going to feel? And I'm ready to go. But I can't. So it felt like, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute maybe. In reality, it was maybe 3-4 minutes. If there had been a big enough gust of wind,
yeah,
the choice would have been taken out of my hands.
Have you ever spoken to your mum about this?
No.
So what happens if she listens to this?
I don't care.
Yeah. So you never spoke to her about any of these moments of... Have you spoken to anyone about it, apart from obviously like friends?
It's come up briefly. Like I've mentioned to people that I felt like this. I've mentioned to people that this happened.
Yeah.
There's only one person that I think when I came back off the ledge, I had a proper conversation. And that was only because at that point when I clambered back over, again, randomly, I get a phone call from a guy called Shaq, who years before I'd played football with. But he'd called me because I think a couple of months before, he'd come to Dubai and he'd come and stayed with me for a couple of nights. We weren't even close. But he'd stayed with me for a couple of nights. So he'd called up just to check in because he felt like he had to. And I was maybe half an hour from climbing back over. And he's talking to me and he was like, you don't sound right. And just verbal diarrhea. He's probably the only person that's probably ever heard the full story.
Yeah. And then And then obviously, and that point to mentality, how long was the gap between that?
A couple of years still.
Yeah.
I still needed to get myself right.
What made you, at what point had you been able to get right?
Am I right?
Huh?
That's the question, isn't it? Am I right?
Yeah. Well, that was going to be the following question is like, are you happy with how things are going now? Do you still feel and have the same feelings sometimes, or are you completely over that now?
I love my life now because I've got purpose. I've got things to live for. I've got a beautiful little son. I'm expecting another one. I've got an incredible wife. I've got my family. I've got her family. There's love, right?
Yeah. And this goes back to what we said at the beginning, right? It's about finding your purpose.
Correct.
Maybe you just weren't finding your purpose, and then that now is your family being there for them and helping them grow.
But my family's not my purpose. I mean, Tiago is my purpose, but that's not my divine purpose. Is to help people. I've always known that ever since I was a kid. I just didn't know how. Didn't have a vehicle to.
And that's where mentality
is now.
Yeah.
So that combined with raising what will be my children now, and building.
Yeah.
That's my purpose.
So going back to what I said earlier on about being a man, like, how do you think a man should be then?
That's
difficult question to answer, isn't it?
Yeah. How do I think a man should be? I think at our core, we have to stay true to our innate DNA, which is that of provider, protector, and solution finder. At our core. Wrapped around that, there needs to be a level of understanding. And I talk a lot about being vulnerable and vulnerability, and so because of what I've been through anecdotally, right? But I believe that vulnerability comes in understanding what you're feeling. And I don't think enough men
are self-aware to really acknowledge it. Yeah. It's something that I had to work on a lot with, a lot of therapy, because like my emotion was demonstrated in anger, mainly when I drank. And it's just, it was just bottled up inside. And you flick a switch on, especially when you're not in the right frame of mind. Yeah. Oof, bad things happen.
I concur. I tell people, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, Chevelle, the other day, and I was saying to her, I was like, anger's a wasted emotion. She's like, what do you mean?
Because you're the only person that experiences it. Doesn't matter what anyone's done. You're the only one inside.
This is it.
What's weird is that you try and reason with anger, and it just doesn't. It's
There's
so
no
difficult.
sense to it.
Yeah,
there's no sense to it. And on top of that, you could use that same energy in so many more productive ways. Feel what you're feeling, yes, but use it for something. Do something with it. Go and kick a punch bag. I don't know. Yeah. Go and kick a ball. Cuddle your kid. Do something with it. Don't sit. And most people, when they get angry, just sit and wallow in it, and they make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And next thing they know, they're overflowing. But the actual root cause isn't that serious.
And this is why I feel like it's deeply, deeply, deeply important to either have something like the gym, football, martial arts, because we can't always, unfortunately, in this day and age, as we said at the beginning, follow our purpose. But what we can do is have outlets to make us feel like we're doing something. Correct. And this is why, like, for example, jiu-jitsu now, like, nobody ever heard of it a few years ago. Now it's taken off because men are getting physical with each other, but then having that camaraderie at the end. Nobody's getting hurt, but like, you are being a man in a sense, right? You're showing your masculinity, your strength, etc., etc.
Corey usually talks about how the word emotion breaks down to energy in motion. right? So if you're emotional, take that energy and put it into motion,
Yeah.
and it will help you kind of navigate what you're feeling.
Exactly. Well, this is the thing where it's like when you have a good workout or a good run and you're feeling sad or whatever, how good do you feel afterwards?
Incredible.
You feel so good.
It's euphoric.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? We've been trained not to get out. Right?
Yeah.
So many men are sat in front of a screen playing PlayStation and doing all the things that I mean, especially our generation, right? We were when we were growing up, we were told to be outside.
Yeah.
Go and play, come back when it's dark. Right?
100%.
Now,
I couldn't even imagine being a kid in today's age.
Sat behind the screen. We've been taught to not do the things that are actually good for us. Get out in the sun. Your circadian rhythm. Like just understand. Like you knew when bedtime was. Nowadays, kids don't know what time bedtime is because they're stuck
And
indoors.
also they're not tired because they're not outside running.
This is it.
Yeah.
So it's just society's been morphed into being just a bunch of robots.
Now on Mentality Podcast, you did a special the other night about high value men.
Yeah.
What is a high value man?
For me, it's a man that operates in their own sovereign self, right? What that means is somebody who's able to stop, understand what it is that they believe to be true and operate in that.
Yeah.
Too many of us, men and women, are operating according to the vibrations and the rhythm of what society tells us we should do. So we never stop to actually think about what we actually believe is true or not. So that for me is one of the aspects of a high value man. The second aspect of a high value man is somebody who's able to, like I said, go back to the core of who we are as men, right?
Yeah.
Protect, provide, and be a solution finder. And finally, a high value man for me is somebody who can galvanize society. Somebody who can bring people together and create communities, tribes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously we've had a really great conversation, Manny, but if I could kind of just like end on one question. If there's one thing that you can do now with your life, like I suppose there's multiple questions that go off the back of this, but first of all, are you content with everything you have right now?
Yes.
Why did you have to hesitate?
Because I'm still very driven. And contentment for me is something that I still battle with because it makes me feel like I'm not ambitious anymore, right? So for me, it's to say I'm content is, there's always something to do. And especially now with mentality, I want to do so much more. I want to get this out to so many more people. I want more people to understand how people feel, what people are feeling, and that there are places and people they can speak to fix. So am I content? I'm content in life, yes. As I said, I've got a beautiful family, beautiful, incredible wife, beautiful children. And I'm building something that I believe is going to change the world without me worried about making money. I don't care about that. I've seen enough money in my life, but literally want to impact people. I want people's lives to be changed.
Yeah. And if anyone's listening into this that's feeling a bit lost with their life, like what kind of advice would you give them?
Three things. The first being, talk to someone, anyone, right? Oftentimes when we feel the way we feel like no one's going to listen, or we feel like we're going to be a burden to people. The fact is, when you voice it out, it begins the cycle of healing, the cycle of fixing. Talk to anyone, your mum, your Dad, the friggin' man down the street, I got the security guard at the gate, I don't give a fuck, just talk to somebody. Second thing would be begin to learn to be a little bit more introspective. Shut out the noise. Understand what you're feeling and be comfortable with it. Because when you do that, then you'll be able to talk about it. Yeah. And the final thing is find a community, find a tribe, find people, like-minded people who you can connect with.
Yeah.
Because you'll realize very soon that more people feel the things you feel.
And you're not alone.
There you go.
Yeah.
Finally, get in touch with mentality.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Obviously, we saw parts, and anyone watching this, obviously, it's obviously still quite emotional to talk about some of the stuff that you've gone through, but I really appreciate you opening up to help. One of the messages that I want to get across to people when they listen to this podcast is, doesn't matter what you've been through, what you're going through, where you're currently at, you can do something with your life.
You absolutely can. Absolutely can. It's hard, yes, but I know that in order for me to have the impact I have to deal with my own pains.
Yeah.
And so you'll see me fight. I never used to cry, but you'll see me fighting the urge to let myself go because there's a bigger purpose at hand.
Yeah. And as well, you're more aware of your emotions now.
Yeah.
Well, I do appreciate that, mate. And obviously it's great to meet, and I'm looking forward to obviously seeing how things go. And thank you very much for the coffee roaster as well.
I'm glad you liked it. Have you used it yet?
Not yet, no. What about the skincare? Have you used yours yet?
I have.
And what did you think?
It's fantastic, actually. I used the serum the other day.
Nice.
Felt incredible. A little bit of a tingly feeling.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I'm glad you said that, because we worked on the concentrations of the serum. Because slight tingling feeling we've got a number of acids that are inside. So you've got succinic acid, which basically helps gets inside the pores, clean out the pores, and also lactic acid as well, which basically gently exfoliates the stimulates blood flow, and helps regenerate the new skin cells, which obviously basically means is your skin is basically helping skin cells regenerate, which means the more skin cells you have, new skin cells you have, like the younger the skin, basically.
Incredible.
So it's not.
I really enjoyed it. I'm taking it to Thailand with me next week, so
nice.
Yeah, it'll be good fun.
Well, I'm glad for that. For those listening, thank you very much for listening to the podcast. May I ask a small favor, and that is to whatever channel you're listening on right now, just go over and press subscribe if you haven't already. And you can also leave us a 5-star review on audio platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, because if you do that, what it does is it helps us get out to more people. So I really do appreciate it if you can go over and hit that 5-star rating. But until next time, thank you very much for tuning in to the Daniel Leese Podcast, and we'll see you again very soon.